Trinidad Legacy Stories, The Merikins. Brought to you by the National Gas Company, at the forefront of energy.
Andrew Downing, George Eliot, and Ezekiel Looney came from Virginia. Charles Ayres came from Maryland, while Peter Floyd and Sable Atwater came from Georgia. I am Lisa Atwater, sixth-generation descendant of Sable Atwater, proud Merikin. Our story goes back to the War of 1812. It's sometimes called the War of Faulty Communication. It was a war fought between ex-colonial master, meaning Great Britain, and ex-colony, United States of America. Britain needed to arm her war effort, and she encouraged ex-slaves to run away from their masters. Britain lost the war, and in losing the war, she had to find somewhere to place these men whom she had armed as part of her war effort. Of course, there was cause for concern because Trinidad was a fairly young plantation economy, and here you were bringing in people with military experience into Trinidad, into a slave environment, into a slave society, but they were coming as free men and women to chart their own destiny. So they arrived in Trinidad in batches of companies. They had to build their own homes. They built the Moruga Road that we still use today. They were responsible for trying and diversifying our economy in terms of planting food crops that they sold at Princeton Market and certainly sustained themselves. They were responsible for bringing the Moruga Hill Rise that is very popular today. It has endured more than 2 centuries of being here. They were responsible for bringing the Baptist religion to Trinidad. We are on site here at 5th Company Baptist Church. 5th Company Baptist Church has the distinction of being the oldest Baptist church in Trinidad and Tobago. When I think about American tradition, I think of the value of the oral tradition. Over the years, you have found that both descendants of Merikins and people from the outside were fascinated with this idea of slaves becoming soldiers and then becoming settlers. We have many people who have written stuff that has enriched and certainly provided a storehouse of information on American identity, American history, American contribution. And we also have the work done by Alfred Boise Huggins from Right Indian War. He wrote Saga of the Companies. That was an early piece of work that has since been revised on 2 occasions by his children, and it gives a comprehensive analysis of the company villages and the practices within the company villages.
Although the Merikins developed a reputation for being hard and productive workers, given their origins, color, and occupations, they were classed by the wider society as only a narrow step removed from being slaves. In adapting to the framework and social isolation, and within the boundaries of their communities, they cultivated an individualistic and militant independence for which they became notorious. My sisters and I, we began to update the book. Just a project that we thought that we would do, let's update this book. And with a sense of getting it into the school system, that we thought that the children in the Moruga area should know their history. Looking at the history and reading it and listening to it, listening to the stories, I became really very engrossed in history. And I would be introduced to names, the Jacksons, the Loneys, etc. And I'd be told that they were Merikins, they were your family too. and the story of the Merikins. And that really excited me as to know what it was all about. Local history is really very important. It is important to know that, my name, Cooper or Jackson or Ayers, or whatever my name is, Bobcom, whatever the name is, that person survived even though the circumstances were not good. And it therefore gives me that pride and that sense of, something, if they could do it, I can do it too. I presume the values, one of survival, the one of leadership, the one of, in spite of it all, how difficult the circumstances are, I would survive. It's powerful, and that's what makes me American.
Trinidad Legacy Stories, The Merikins. Brought to you by the National Gas Company, at the forefront of energy.